What's good, and what the hell is DGA Gaming doing, bro? Are you actually self-inserting as AI Doomslayer in front of 1,000 people? Come on, man. You know what? Let's just get into the meat of the bone.
The videos I've been referring to for the past few discourses are what Warrior L brought up as proof of inconsistencies. I'm referring to something he has shown, yet in his infinite wisdom, he tries to deny ever doing so. Here are the videos he showed, along with bot scaling from goddamn Discord of all places.
So right off the bat, you get the argument wrong. First of all, the videos in question weren't used as evidence, but examples instead. If I were to use that as evidence, that would be very obviously cherry-picking. But these are simply examples, otherwise I will be showing scans directly from the God of War sources rather than interpretations from these different people and these different locations that I found these screenshots from. Also, it's nice that you conceded that I didn't only use videos, but I do agree that Discord is bad for various reasons, but it isn't bot scaling, it's just some scaling threads.
Referring to, not the developer interviews. I literally said that these videos shown here do not affect official material, with official interviews and statements falling under this category. Warrior L once again started with a strawman due to his inability to comprehend simple English.
Well, obviously they do not affect official material, thank you for referring my previous claim. The thing with these videos is that they use official material with different interpretations. But that's not what we're using to prove contradictions, because it's not up to interpretation, it's up to the P and not P within the official sources.
Except that this is just invincible ignorance at this point. I've repeatedly shown that no official material so much as implies that the tree is infinite.
It's funny how you pause the video midway through so it looks like I'm just repeating the claim. When I'm affirming something before giving the argument, I just spotted your bad faith tactic there, little buddy.
This retard never-
DGA Gaming, it's funny how you want to act all high and mighty behind the AI and call people insults, while when I came to you throwing insults and jabs, you balled out on multiple occasions and you got cooked by mentality. Like, you're completely embarrassing.
Never understood this. It's not surprising, considering the fact that his English is so bad he probably skipped those classes at school so he could go-
But enough about your English, DGA Gaming, let's take a look at his English.
These are all of the fake scans that were used in the video. The scan at the bottom is not fake. It doesn't even support your claim, as your usage of it is based on a willfully ignorant assumption of the cosmology. If you wish to dispute the fact that these scans are fake and unverifiable, there's only one thing you can do.
Previously shown, buddy, thus far you have shown nothing to refute any of the arguments within the video that debunk your past claims and arguments. Looks like this time you didn't even bother to watch it a few times, and if you did, then you simply have tracking issues.
Oh, I misheard it now, did I? Let's play them again and compare your author with other
statements.
Thank you very much for proving my point. There's your English lesson. And the difference between author and other statement, like I said between that, 2-second clip that you put in, that you take this recent video as an example, when you can correct the spelling of a word or mess up on it at the same time. Also, since I have authority over my own statement, I know damn well what I said and what I meant. So you trying to pull this bad faith tactic is very embarrassing. It's also a blatant strawman and a pathetic attempt to double down on it. Just admit you got the argument completely wrong.
These images to support your claims. Thus, it is your burden to prove the authenticity of your sources. Telling me to do it is shifting the burden of proof. An amateur mistake.
That's under the presupposition that they said it's wrong and you show no evidence while saying this. Also, no, I gave these images as examples for trivialism. Also, you say devs as if they're the directors of the stories being referenced to. What's going to be the basis that he's reliable in the first place? You're appealing to the same guy who said not to take his word for granted and said that Kratos is zero-dimensional, when that's straight up a logical impossibility for Kratos to be zero-dimensional. Also, it's not shifting the burden when you make a whole new claim like the devs refuted it. The reason why you asked for evidence is because you had an objection like that. Now that it's refuted, what is the basis of questioning at hand? Especially when the images I am using are being used as examples of different interpretations with different arguments.
Why don't you link all your sources like I do so anyone can verify their authenticity?
Because not everything that's authentic can be put into a link, knobhead. Statements within the game cannot be put into some archive link unless you externally screenshot it or archive it externally. And yes, I do put links for archival purposes, and I probably should archive more. That is a good thing, and you people watching this should probably do it as well, especially if it's, a public link or a tweet, or anything of that nature, yes, it is smart to archive it.
Calling out logical fallacies because you keep making them. Your attempts at damage control are pathetic.
And yet, when you call them out, there's almost barely any substance as to how my argument is fallacious. It's almost as if you're throwing out these concepts to up your rhetoric. Also, I love even when I breathe, he has something to say about it. DGA Gaming, you're obsessed about me, dude. You're obsessed about me, Holmes.
Presents a non sequitur because the conclusion that Yggdrasil is infinite does not logically follow from the premise.
That's basically saying it's a non sequitur because it's a non sequitur. The very definition of a non sequitur is when you have a conclusion or a statement that does not logically follow from the previous premise. Alongside that, you don't really state why it would be, let alone even continue with your non sequitur argument, because you add on your own interpretations and arguments against Yggdrasil. So this is just a textbook example of begging the question.
The Yggdrasil operates beyond the conventional limits of space-time, growing to enormous sizes, supporting and connecting 9 alternate countries that exist in the same 3-dimensional space due to magic existing beyond these realms. It is intertwined with the fate of the realms, life, death, etc. All of this serves to showcase the magical nature of the tree. Jumping from transcendence attributed to said magical nature to its size is an unjustified leap. Transcendence here would simply mean that some conventional limits don't restrict it. Saying that this transcendence means that it is unbound by space-time in every way is taking the word out of its context, where it was a flowery summation of all that was said before, applying it to all limits when only a select few were given.
First of all, that's presupposing their countries. I love how you try to slip that in as to manipulate the viewers. That's realms, buddy, as they've been called throughout the entire series, and you blatantly just said it transcends space and time, so I'll build my refutation from there. Yggdrasil is beyond space and time, which already implies it operates on a higher ontological level, and you somehow take it as, some 3D magical tree with vines to the realms. Something that transcends the fabric of space-time is in a qualitatively different mode of existence. Time is generally considered the 4th dimension in physics, so if something transcends it, it is at least 5-dimensional. Also, for some reason, it looks like you're trying to argue they're on the same plane of existence. Not sure if you meant the Yggdrasil, or that the 9 realms do, among themselves. But if you're arguing that the Yggdrasil exists on the same plane, the other realms should be 5-dimensional as well. But that's, the less likely argument. I think you're arguing the realms themselves are 3-dimensional, which we can get to shortly.
Ironically enough, hard limits were imposed on its size. Here, I assume that Warrior L is going with all limits of space-time falling under the Transcendence, despite the lack of supporting information and application of these few niche cases to all limits, making it a hasty generalization. As the alternative is that he just set the circumventable limit, no basis whatsoever, committing a nominal fallacy by using the word at its highest possible interpretation, spitting in the face of all of the context. Now, the second part of the argument argues that since the tree transcends space-time, there's no limit on it being infinite. Now this part would be just dandy all on its own, so you remember that the tree does have hard limits on both its transcendence and size, as I've shown multiple times throughout this series. In summary, transcendence in no way can or does apply to every aspect of space-time. It doesn't logically support the lack of a different set of limits, or relate.
As I interpret your argument more, you're intentionally watering down the word transcendence to dodge its implications. The term transcends space and time in any cosmological context does not mean it just ignores some rules and is beyond some. As a matter of fact, interpretation actually adds more assumptions than what I'm putting in, making it less likely because throughout your yappery you have never shown us any scans. So moving on, in physics, transcending space-time implies higher dimensionality or operation in a separate ontological framework. And even if you want to look at it from a more philosophical side of things, it would still imply timelessness and, immateriality. You don't get to neuter the term because you're engaging in equivation by redefining transcend to fit your narrative instead of its established use in metaphysics. Also, quoting what you said, you're ignoring it out of the context. That's an appeal to undefined context, because what context? Throughout my previous videos, I've shown multiple pieces of context, and you're just asserting context like it's some kind of shield. If Yggdrasil connects and sustains all realms, then it's not subject to their dimensional laws. That's the point, by the way. And if you're gonna bring the branches falling, I've said this multiple times, it doesn't mean the entire Yggdrasil structure is spatially limited. In God of War, the tree has both a cosmic, metaphysical aspect, like its roots affecting the flow of time and space, and a localized visual manifestation, like the in-game world tree that you would walk around in. That's dual aspect ontology, like how platonic forms can manifest in the world, but aren't reduced to the forms they take. Also, no, you're the one doing a nominal fallacy because you're hearing transcend space-time and you're just choosing to interpret it in the dumbest way possible because big magic tree. The real fallacy here is ignoring ontological implications of the term and using flowery terms to downplay its actual weight.
Quest to find the stags to save the branches, and Ratatoskr was chosen by the World Tree itself, and is its only tender. He is the ultimate authority on the tree in every way, and is supported by Mimir. Not to mention that many of his more drastic claims have been verified. The highest authority on the topic, whose far more outrageous statements were proven, stated it. Mimir, the man who can tell no lies, confirms the above. The game gives you a quest to stop what the squirrel stated. This is far more concrete than the Transcendence, Thor splintering the Yggdrasil, and other things that Warrior L always uses. Denying this but accepting all of the rest just goes to show.
Yeah, so Ratatoskr is a cool squirrel, but he's also constantly sarcastic and uses flowery language, and has an unhinged cosmological awareness that's ambiguous. He exists within Yggdrasil, but isn't an absolute authority about Yggdrasil's nature, and the squirrel says the branches falling is catastrophic, not that Yggdrasil is 3D or has a fixed limit. He's warning about the realm collapse, not defining Yggdrasil's physics. And for the second point, no, Mimir is not infallible. Mimir is wise, but he's also, he speaks from limited mythic knowledge. He confesses multiple times to being wrong or not knowing certain things, especially about the Jotnar or other higher forces. This is just an appeal to authority.
You ever think about them? All the time. They're far from here. Far from Odin and Thor. Like, I wonder what lands they've gone to. What seas they've crossed. I wonder what lands they've gone to. What seas they've crossed.
And checkmate.
Why? I want to find them. I'm going to save my father and then I'll find them.
Okay, to address this one, a cosmology doesn't need to be limited to a smaller part of it. Smaller parts of a bigger cosmology can exist. Cosmologies are more complex than that, if you know anything about it. Also, try swimming to, Muspelheim, for example, and see how your dumbass gets folded by realm barriers. Why is Sindri's house able to float between realms without ever entering space? But this isn't really his main argument here, so, moving on.
Realms are not infinite, and that the branches that supposedly aren't limited by space-time in any way still fall due to gravity. That is, checkmate.
Oh, for the love of God. That whole scene is an illustration and representation of events. It's narrated by Angerboda in a symbolic language while painted murals animate the myth. It is a stylistic storytelling device, not a literal documentary. So you're just doing the fallacy of literalism. The branches are representations of realms in collapse, not literal twigs breaking under physics. The Yggdrasil exists partially within the game's dreamlike metaphysical layer. If you recall the realm between realms, Sindri's house, and the world's tree paths, none of this is structured like a planet. It is a hub of cosmological connection. Even if gravity applied there, that doesn't automatically mean the tree is spatially bound. You're forgetting physics can manifest in partial ways, like a 5D object casting a 3D shadow that falls, or for example in Lovecraft where Cthulhu gets wet in the ocean.
Like Warrior L still thinks that destroying a 7-dimensional object makes you 8-dimensional. I love that he couldn't defend the fact that he said the tree is 7 or 8-dimensional, because Thor destroyed it. And he earlier scaled Thor to 8-dimensional because he destroyed the tree, so he tried to perform damage control, but it was too irrelevant to even stand a chance at working.
I could in fact defend it, but throughout our discourse that has been going on for a while, we've made other major points that relate to what kind of arguments those mainly hinge off of. Also, no, I didn't say just because he affects X structure, he scales above X structure. That was a highball which can be put forth into scalings. I also think Thor is way above 8D relating to other kinds of scalings that I have in my pocket.
No, it doesn't. How many times do I have to explain that literal and artistic representations are not the same?
Yes, they're not the same, and I've actually started talking about this last stream about when you scale something based off of a mere illustration, and I was warning people how you should be careful doing it. I always have context behind what the illustration is supposed to be.
Or in awe of different abilities that they don't have. There are two huge problems with this. The first is that the sisters are incredibly arrogant and conceited, and allegedly have the greatest power. Their being in awe of a lesser power doesn't fit in with their constructed characters. The second issue arises yet again from your failure in grammar. When a particular kind of power or a particular power aka ability is being referred to, the sentence would be, even she had to be in awe of such a power. Not that it is a power. The sentence just says, such power instead of such a power, as the novel does. Already shown scans proving that it is possible and has already been done. Stop throwing the word resisting around like it's some unique ability. I've also shown how the sisters never worked unitedly against Kratos, which made their power almost impossible to circumvent. Did you not read the book or the images I showed?
Start off, the God of War novels are secondary canon. It's already refuted if it contradicts the established facts in the actual games, Kratos breaking their fate, interfering with time, etc. Also, I just want to address something funny that he stated. Since the sentence says such power instead of such a power, it must refer to raw power and not ability. I agree such power is grammatically acceptable as a reference to a specific kind of strength, but context matters. If we take into account that contextually it's referring to an ability or power that rivals or defies the sister's influence, then that is not a grammatical fail. Saying even she had to be in awe of such power can absolutely refer to resistance or transcendence of their influence. You don't need to say a within the statement.
The reason Kratos didn't die permanently when he died was because of the Sisters of Fate playing around and fighting among themselves. The Sisters do not have absolute control unless they work together in perfect sync, and their plots against each other are directly responsible for their deaths.
Even though he literally kills the Sisters of Fate and hijacks their looms, Kratos forced his way through beings who supposedly govern time and destiny, and game events are more reliable than what the novels say. In God of War 2, Kratos goes to the underworld, walks out, kills the sisters, and rewrites history. It's very simple, albeit the novel does like to add some more features, though they contradict the game at times, which you can go ahead and shave off. He doesn't need them to be out of sync, the gameplay itself shows that. The idea that he needed them to be unsynced is headcanon, and when Kratos got hold of their ability, he didn't need to do the process that you just described in order for the ability to work. So no, DGA, Kratos didn't pull some kind of technicality.
Now, you are trying to eliminate the need to confirm the nature of the origin and intentions behind all of the contradictions. You cannot ignore that most of these contradictions are almost certainly caused by time, team changes, changes in the direction of the narrative, etc. Devs have made it crystal clear that they are trying to avoid contradictions, so it is blatantly obvious that you are burying your head in the ground like a cowardly ostrich to avoid it. Keep spinning your wanks based on headcanon.
First of all, yes, contradictions caused by dev team changes is normal. But these contradictions, like I've said, can build up to a certain criteria. Contradictions are shaved when they are retconned, but there's multiple contradictions that regard the cosmology that haven't been retconned, since there's multiple sources on the discussion of that topic. What matters is internal consistency of the current canon, what actually makes it into the official material, and the criteria for transcendence, existing beyond, space-time, infinite possibilities, metaphysical constructs that are met within the material. You don't need some dev to handhold you with a tweet saying, yes, Kratos is 5D or something like that, yeah.
What he said in that particular post was his opinion, but you act as if he said, everything I have ever said is purely my opinion. It may not be true. At this point, you are just grasping for straws, makes them more reliable. I hope I don't have to explain that a 3-days object isn't superior to lower dimensionality, as these lower dimensions make up the 3-days object's existential nature together. Thus, his statement highlights that the developers never intended for Kratos to be above dimensionality or dimensions in any way.
You just proved my point. His comments are not peer-reviewed, not even studio canon, they're casual interpretations. If some of his posts are opinion, then we must evaluate all of them in a critical sense, okay? That's how epistemology works. And about the Bruno said Kratos isn't dimensional, yeah, but the games contradict him. They show Kratos resisting fate, manipulating time, and interacting with a multiversal world tree. So Bruno's personal disbelief in dimensional scaling is irrelevant if the canon says otherwise.
DGA Gaming just says he proved me wrong, which he didn't, by the way.
Guys, I am not dishonest. And then he proceeds to show a 5-second clip of the video, not letting me elaborate.
Except that we, as power scalers, know that there are infinities with different cardinalities. As I explained in my Doom cosmology video, you can have both countably and uncountably infinite possibilities and subsequent timelines. You still can't deal with the timelines not stated to form for all possibilities, or prove that these timelines are physical without headcanon, or contradicting yourself or the games.
So on this point, I don't think you understand that I'm not talking about set theory here. About the countably and uncountably infinite timelines, yes, that's true in set theory, but when the game says infinite possibilities, they're referring to metaphysical potential and modal realism. Ironically, your own claim supports the idea that these timelines are on a higher cardinality than base existence. So you're ignoring that I'm speaking of modal realism for some reason and feel the need to reference a completely separate concept known as set theory. But you're over here dropping the scope, as if Kratos needs to beat Cantor's theorem, to punch his enemies in the face.
You avoided dealing with my arguments for 10 days. You kept deflecting them during the entire period like a professional dodgeball player using the 5 Ds. Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. As I have shown in my first video regarding this clown, he had his fair share of chances to conduct this debate civilly.
I'm not going to try to entertain this point very much, but you can very well see the screenshot that I'm telling you. How am I dodging if I'm directly trying to get the dialectic to proceed in a format that we're both comfortable with, which is either VC or text, and we conversed upon which one is better, which is kind of subjective according to what you're comfortable with, but you know what? We're sort of having a dialectic right now, so let's proceed this way. It generates content for the both of us as well.
Thanks for the face reveal, LOL.
I like how he just indirectly called me Jemmy. Thanks for the compliment, buddy. He kind of proceeds to explain that Mangler wasn't directly involved in the video, which is fine, I'll grant that.
I have 2 things to say to this. Number 1, I explained why developer statements are necessary at the beginning of that video. Number 2, the developer statements roughly comprise only half of the video. The other half, what I called Section 2, almost purely consists of scenes from the game to back up Section 1. It is evident that Warrior L didn't even watch half of the video, yet he dared to make claims about it.
Yes, developer statements can be useful and a good source as long as the developer statements in question are backed up by official material or an entity of utmost authority within the franchise, particularly for scenes or anything of that nature with no further context. But for some reason, you like to cut 5-second clips of my 9-minute video to make it look like I'm ignorant when I have my reasons. I actually stated this beforehand. The problem with your video is going to be that there's going to need to be substantiation between how the said scenes and statements are supposed to be sequitur, because from there it will come down to interpretation, so you need to uphold and make your interpretation the most concrete, as you even said in the beginning that alternative interpretations can be done, such as taking hyperboles at face value.
This is just ad hominem. You directly jump to insults without even refuting my so-called interpretations. Anyways, let's watch his clip and break down why it supports my premise and is strongly against his.
That's not an ad hominem if I made a statement alongside it and it was supposed to be an opening to the final argument. Looks like he cries like a piss baby, even though he's thrown 1,000 insults throughout the course of the video when I say one thing.
The purpose of my video was to show that, beyond reasonable doubt, the cosmology entailed is an empirical fact, as both the entire developer team and the games unanimously state or support it. It is only the lesser aspects that are up for debate. As much as it pains you, you cannot get on your high horse and verbose your way into acceptance by the masses through debates when it is a fact you are up against. I'm pretty sure you realized it, given how you shied away from arguing with the devs and instead tried to gloss over everything and present yourself as the paragon of truth.
Okay, which part? Because Barlog is a developer, a major one. That is now part of the developer consensus unless you get a cherry pick who counts. You're acting like you dropped gospel, but in all reality all you've done is run in circles and misinterpret so many author statements it's laughable.
Hi, Chuddo's here. After Warrior Z debunked DGA's 20-something minute video, he went to go regenerate his brain cells, so I will be your substitute for this part. Basically, DGA Gaming uploaded a video as an open challenge to all God of War scalers, and the challenge itself is what we can go over, but there's one small problem we need to address before we proceed. Within the video, DGA Gaming put forth a claim that if we do not respond to this within a month, it would be a concession. First off, there was no burden of rejoinder or a time limit for the burden of proof that we agreed to or established, so this claim is invalid and baseless. It's just the fallacy of imposed time constraints. Now onto the actual challenge. He's basically asking for verification behind the God of War, Temple of Helios browser game novels. The website is down, all we have is leftover archives, and DGA Gaming absolutely froths at the mouth of having God of War have anything good. So he's going to go with the position of skepticism, even though he's more so on the side of calling them fake, when the likelihood of that is very low. I'll be creating my own archive after this video since I've noticed there was actually some tampering with the unofficial God of War wiki page where someone wrote that they're non-canon down below, which is such a pathetic attempt at trying to downplay God of War through the wiki. To start off, we'll be going with one of the writers of the novel, Marianne Krawczyk. On her Wikipedia page, it confirms that there was a series of novels that were given during the game's uptime, and before DGA Gaming starts pooping and pissing his pants. This was written back in 2020, and the archives were also published then before the God of War Outerversal craze happened, with these novels as their basis. If you want proof of this, you can check the dates of God of War, scalings on the internet before this exact date. My claim that the novels are real is supported by archived websites, credited writers, and historical marketing campaigns. DGA's claim requires the assumption that multiple independent elements were forged long before they mattered. I think you know which one sounds more likely. Also, I am using an inductive argument. Inductive reasoning deals with probability rather than absolute certainty. I am taking multiple indicators such as archival records, author credibility, timeline consistency. So basically, given all this evidence, it's very likely the novels are real. Chuddo's out.
Anyways, we've sent DGA Gaming home for today. He didn't have any more arguments after this, but before you go, here's his toolbox. Enjoy. That's about it. See ya.